So Kling 2.5 Turbo has just been released with improved prompt adherence and realistic motion. Combine this with image generation from Nano Banana, Flux and even Kling 2.1 with AI voice, sound and music from ElevenLabs, you can create some incredible cinematic AI films. And today, I'm going to break down the exact process.
They say the worst part of space is the silence, the endless dark, but that's not true. The real fear isn't being alone out here. It's when you realize something else is breathing in the dark with you.
So the very first step to creating your AI films is the storyboard. And the reason you want a storyboard is because it's a place where you can save all of the prompts that you like and also save all of the image generations and then put them in an order that will allow you to understand what your AI film will look like. Because you want to go ahead and create all of the images for your scenes and shots in one go, so then you can have a clear vision of what your AI story will look like and then generate all of the video between these images. And when it comes to generating the images, I actually used a bunch of different image generation models. Now the model you use to generate the image doesn't really matter. What matters is that you get the look and output that you're going for. And so for some of these, I actually used Kling 2.1. And then when it came to editing the images on top, I used Flux and Nano Banana. And to begin my story and start creating the prompts, I actually used ChatGPT. And here I simply asked, create some image prompts for an incredible sci-fi image that's almost daunting in space, something insanely eerie. And from this, I got a few different examples down here. And this is what gave me then inspiration and vision for what my story was going to be. And my favorite was this one right here. And so I simply copied this and then I headed back into Kling 2.1. And as you can see, these generations down here, these are the images I got. And so I like this one. I simply downloaded it and then I added it to my Figma file and I copied the prompt so I can continuously go back to it later. And the reason again you paste the prompts is because otherwise you're constantly searching through your entire history and it's nice to be able to go back to it with ease. And now for these first two shots here, these were simple prompt to image generations and I used again ChatGPT for both of these prompts. But for the following images, I actually used a different method and I used a different model to Kling 2.1 image generator. For this next scene right here, what I did was I used Flux Kontext with inside FreePic and I generated it using this prompt. Super close-up shot from image 2, and so we used this previous image as a reference from a completely new angle with the man from image 1, and so I added myself into the scene, walking out in an astronaut suit. I want this to be set in the world from image 2. So again, I'm making sure it's in the context of image 2. And as you can see from this image generation here, it looks like I'm walking down a corridor away from the spaceship in the background within this world right here. And so here you can see in FreePic, we can see that I used Flux Kontext High, and this is the exact generation that I ended up using. However, if we scroll down a bit, we can see that these generations here, I tried using Nano Banana for, but Nano Banana isn't great at recreating different angles. But what Nano Banana is great at is what I'm about to show you next. And so if we take a look at this last shot right here, again, this one was generated with Flux Kontext. I used these two previous scenes as a reference, and they're pretty much spot on. And this was the text prompt that I used with it. However, when you want your scenes to evolve a little bit, or you've got the exact scene you're looking for, but you're missing a little detail, this is where you want to bring in Nano Banana. And so if we head back into FreePic, we can see that I wanted to add a little alien onto my character. And we've got a bunch of different generations here. But here, as you can see, I use Nano Banana to generate a bunch of different shots with an alien that's got tentacles. And these were perfect because it doesn't change anything else within the scene, but it adds the little detail that will make or break your scene. And so for things like this, once you've got the base image, you can then add onto it with Nano Banana. And now, before we go on to creating the video from these images, I do want to mention that most of the time you'll want to upscale. For example, this with Flux Kontext is at a good resolution, but upscaling to 4K is always a good idea. And especially if you're making edits with Nano Banana actually reduces the resolution of your images. So you just want to make sure you go and upscale again with Topaz or Magnific or whichever upscale you would like to use, because there's a ton of different upscalers and upscale tools in themselves could be a video of its own. But once you have all of your images, now we can go to the fun part and we can actually go to Kling's video generator and select the 2.5 Turbo model, which is Kling's latest video generation model with incredible prompt adherence and realistic motion. And essentially, it's as simple as uploading your image to the start frame right here and then putting in your prompt. And now for the prompts, you want to describe what happens, but to make it more cinematic, it's always really good to add camera movement prompt in there as well. So for an example, if I'm saying, oh, I want the ship to be flying towards the monolith, or I want my character to be walking along the corridor hesitantly, I also add the camera movement that I want to see. So for example, camera slowly panning backwards or slowly panning forwards or panning upwards. But adding the camera movement you want to see really helps make it feel and look cinematic, because films always have a little bit of camera movement. And now sometimes you'll get exactly what you're looking for within the first prompt. So this was a one-shot prompt right here, but for others, you're going to have to prompt multiple times. And the best way to do it is essentially iterate on top of your prompt based on the results that you get. Here, if we take a look at this one, as you can see, I had the camera pan upwards at the end because I thought it would look good and cinematic, but it didn't quite give me the feel that I was looking for. And so I changed the camera movement within the prompt just so it subtly zoomed in, but then I didn't feel like the ship was landing. And so I just iterated a little bit, and I wanted to add more red light that we see on the ship at the beginning right here from the thrusters at the back. But we end up getting these red beams right here, but I really like the way the ship lands with the sparks and the smoke that comes out. So I decided to actually keep this one, and I just cut it off in post. And so if we actually go into Premiere Pro and take a look, as you can see, it's basically cut just before the red beams appear. So sometimes you've got a video generation that's salvageable because you don't need the entire 5 seconds or 10 seconds that's generated with Kling 2.5. And now another example, for one of my next scenes, this one right here where my character is walking along. Originally, I used this scene in my edit, but later on when I was compiling it all together, I felt like, he wasn't scared. He was supposed to be a little bit more afraid. And so I then later on changed the prompt, and man walking slowly, hesitantly away from the ship, looking around in fear. And so I added a little bit more context in how the character should be feeling and how he should look. And as you can see, the walk is totally different. And so I ended up using this one, which I really think helps sell the effect in the short AI film that I created. And now for the last part of this sequence, with this image right here, I was originally making up the story as I went. Yes, going against my own advice, but right here, as you can see, it wasn't respecting the prompt I was going for very clearly because I wanted the man to actually say something. And so Video 2.5 Turbo from Kling isn't great at getting people to talk. It's not as good and doesn't have as much prompt adherence when it comes to speech as VO3 has, for example. And I couldn't quite get what I was looking for, but I decided to change the end of my film anyway. And so I tried prompting it a few different times, but what I did end up doing was using this part right here, because as he opens his mouth, I feel like he's breathing and he's become aware of something. He's like realizing something's happening. And then what I decided to do is, based on this image, I actually generated a bunch of different scenes with different things happening. So him breathing heavily, him screaming in panic, and then an alien appearing and coming out of his mouth. And then what I did within the edit was cut these different scenes together, appearing one after the other very quickly to add this horror thriller effect. And below that, what I did was, we'll get to it in just a second, was add sound effects using ElevenLabs AI sound effects generator. So let's take a look.
With you.
And so that is how the kind of story and the intro to this AI film ends. And the thing that really sells it and pulls it all together is the voiceover, sound effects, and music. Because if we watch the entire thing without, it will feel very empty. And to create the voiceover to my story, once again, I actually ended up using ChatGPT. And the way it happened is the following. I first started out by creating some AI music in ElevenLabs. And if we take a listen right here,
shadows crawling down the hall.
It added in this voiceover because I didn't ask for an instrumental. I mentioned that it was eerie thriller music with an arpeggiator, and I got exactly what I wanted, and it suggested this voice and this kind of voiceover on top of the music track right here. And what I ended up actually doing is taking these and improving it using ChatGPT. And so I asked it to rewrite and rearrange some of them, and I ended up getting this line right here. However, I removed some of it. And so in the text-to-speech tool, I pasted the exact voiceover that I wanted, and I also added an audio tag to direct the voice how I wanted it to sound. And I wanted this to be cinematic for my AI cinematic film. And then I went ahead and chose the Lucius Deep Voice, and I clicked generate. And then I simply just imported this into Premiere Pro, and we have the exact voiceover that we're looking for.
They say the worst part of space is the silence, the endless
And then you combine this with the music.
dark, but that's not true. The real fear isn't being...
And then you go and add some AI sound effects and you have your AI cinematic film. And for the sound effects, the more layers you add and the more detail you add, the better and the more cinematic it will look, sound and feel, because the sound is what immerses you into an AI film. And so to create these, we would just go into ElevenLabs, go to sound effects, and we would simply type out all of the sounds that we want to hear. And so for example, here I simply typed out horror movie sound, and then I got the sound that allowed me to create this horror thriller scene at the end right here. And then what you need to go and do for each individual scene is add sound effects. And so for example, here for this scene, we could add a sound of a spaceship flying. And again, we could simply go ahead and type this out. We could type out spaceship flying. Then in the next scene, we've got the spaceship landing. We could add thruster noises. We could add spark noises, smoke noises. We could even type out spaceship landing. In the next scene here, we could add some boot noises. We could also add some heavy breathing from the astronaut, and then add them all into your project. And the more layers of audio you have, the better it will sound. But adding the voiceover, the AI music, and the AI sound effects will really help sell your AI cinematic films and take them to the next level. And just to emphasize how important the audio is, if we just listen to the audio tracks, it still sounds really good.
They say the worst part of space is the silence, the endless dark, but that's not true.
But if we just watch the video with no audio, it's not quite the same. And that is how to create AI cinematic films with Kling 2.5 Turbo combined with image generation and using ElevenLabs. If you have any questions, let us know in the comment section down below. And if you want to see more AI workflows, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. Thanks for watching.